My name's Mike Hartington. I am a developer advocate at Ionic. You can find me online if you have any questions. After the conference is over and you want to discuss some few things, feel free to reach out. I'm basically M Hartington everywhere. And I want to talk about the impact that progressive web apps can have on a business. Now, originally I had called this the business case for PWAs, but really I want to focus on the impact and then the technology that is behind all of this. Taking a look at some of the APIs that are available to progressive web apps and what kind of impact that can have on your business, on a couple example businesses that we have, um, and why you should consider using these technologies. So I think the first and most important impact that we can talk about is that um, having a progressive web app that is one code base is a lot cheaper than having multiple native apps and a web app. So having a really good progressive web app, the impact on it is that it'll be better for your wallet. It'll be cheaper in the long run, and we are done here, right? No. We'll talk a little bit more about than just the financial impact, but let's talk about the actual numbers here. So let's dive into what this really is and some of my background. Um, I've been working on the web for most of my career, um, varying degrees of web technologies, whether this is hybrid apps, cross-platform development, native development. I specifically try to focus on mobile and figure out the best ways that we can ship a functioning web app and do it in the most effective way possible. And really, the web itself is an amazing platform. Compared to at least even 5 years ago, the browsers and devices and the targets that we have available for us are miles better. It is a great time to be a developer on the web and a great time to be a company that is going to target the web as their deployment platform, because we have a lot of things available to us that just make it so much easier to work to ship a good experience to our users. With a lot of these APIs that we're seeing coming out, again, I'm a developer background. I focus on the technology first, and then how can that improve our experiences as a company and as a user. With a lot of these APIs that are shipping now, the impact, reason and the logic behind a lot of them has definitely been driven on how to improve user experience and how that translates into actual business impact. Like, how can doing X, Y, and Z not only give a better user experience, but also improve your product, your app, whatever you are shipping? How can these things, how can we have a great user experience and a good product experience? So a lot of what we're going to look at is how these two can go hand in hand. Good user experience, but also good product experience. And, progressive web apps in general definitely hit that perfect middle ground of we are going to focus on great user experience, but also great product experience. So, I tend to be in the minority in the regards that I kind of dislike the term progressive web app because it really makes people think that you're making a thing, when really you should be focusing on creating a good web experience. And these collection of APIs that we have here are not necessarily tied to the concept of a PWA, and more just really good web APIs and really good implementation and details that you, even if you're not making a progressive web app in today, you can start to implement the stuff and feel the impact of it right away versus going full force into this progressive web app mindset. Now, when I start talking about PWAs and discussing what you can do with them and how they can impact, the company and what kind of results you should be seeing, a lot of the times we hear this pushback from, someone at the company, a C-level, a tech lead, a lone developer who happens to like working in certain technologies, that your app or your product needs to be in an app store. For various reasons, this is still something that people have set in their mind at the leadership level, is that the web just doesn't cut it. You need to be in the app store. And I always propose the question, do you need to be in the app store? And the things that always come back are, with an app store or with these native apps as a development target, you're able to reach users much easier. It's integrated into most mobile operating systems. It's kind of second nature for users these days, that if you want something, you just go to the app store and you download that app. You're also able to get a richer set of features. Features that your users are going to want to use and then want to keep coming back to. Push notifications, for example, all these features that keep users engaged with your app and keep constantly coming back to it. And then you're going to want to figure out about the integration with the device. Native apps just have nailed this. You can search through something in your phone, and it's going to give you results potentially from the actual native app itself. So these are some of the reasons why people think that they need a native app. And, let's kind of break these down and look at these reasons. We want to make sure that we are keeping, our users engaged and getting more users and just kind of getting out of our way. So these are kind of the, constraints that we like to work in, and the constraints that we need to keep in mind when building a web app and picking these, picking progressive web apps as our technology of choice. So I wanted to look at the reach and access part of it, because obviously we could have a really great product, we could have a really great app, but if we don't have users, and our users, or if we don't have users coming to our app, we might as well not exist at all. And let's start off by stating that there's over 15 billion mobile devices. As a market, that is a huge market. Nearly everyone in the world has a mobile device. Some people have two. But the main goal here should be to try to target all of those devices as much as possible. Even if we can get like a small subset, it's great, but the more the better. The more opportunity and the more possibilities that we have to target these devices, the better that we're going to have a successful product. Now, the argument for being in the native app store is maybe compelling, but let's take some examples here. We have, for example, a product that could only be targeted to iOS only. And notoriously, Clubhouse was this example. They were a great app, or still are. They're still around. They're a great app. They have a lot of amazing features. People really like it. Targeted iOS only from day one, and they literally had about 25% of all mobile devices. iOS accounts for 25% of all mobile devices in the world, and by targeting only one platform, they limited their user set right off the bat. 25% of 15 billion is still a good amount of users, but your opportunity to grow from beyond that is limited. You're already capped at how many possible users you could actually reach with this. So great job having an iOS only app. You've capped your user count. And then the inverse of this is also true. If you are only targeting Android, congratulations, you've just limited yourself to a certain set of users. The Android market is very competitive, and not many users download apps these days. They are used to going, they have their core set of features, and they don't venture out beyond that. On the other hand, if you were to target the web or progressive web apps in general, congratulations, you now can reach potentially all 15 billion of those mobile devices. The web's ubiquitous. Any device that exists right now has access to a mobile browser. And if you have a really good PWA, they can load that website. They can load that web app, and they can use the features and at least even get interest in what offerings that you have. It's searchable. we don't need a dedicated search, our dedicated app store, though there are efforts to get PWAs in the app stores. Why do we need that when we already have, search engines that do this for us? We can already apply the principles of good SEO practices and making sure that whatever we are looking for, whatever our users could be looking for, we rank well there. We don't need to have a dedicated app store. We just have our own search engines. And, popularity aside, we have Google that can index this for us. And then shareable. If I have an app and I have a feature that I want to share to my brother, I can just text him the link to it. I don't need to go through the whole, ritual of opening the app store, downloading the app, then going to search for the product. Having that access to just send a link to somebody is so incredible. And PWAs just knocked this out of the park. It is far better experience than, say, having a native app. And companies have seen this before. So there's a really good online retailer called George. They've shipped a fantastic PWA and generally a really good web experience. Now, not only did they see a increase in conversion rate, but they saw that their users actually spent more time on their app, on their progressive web app than before, by just having a really good web experience and betting on the web. So take those numbers for what they're worth. Generally, users are going to want to go to your website because it's easier. It's simpler than having to go through a native install process. Now, even with that argument, you might think, well, the web just can't do everything that native can. And in some regards, that's a fair assessment. The web is still playing catch up in certain cases to native, but the web also has some advantages that native is just getting now. One of the big features that I do like, though, that the web has, and they kind of took some hints from native, is the rich capabilities that we have a device that has a lot of information already provided on it. One of the features that I want to point out is this idea of web authentication. This is something that I'm still pretty new to, but I think this is a game changer for me. I never liked dealing with authentication, and potentially you are someone who hates dealing with authentication as well. Web authentication aims to solve a lot of these problems and makes the user experience better by giving users developers and companies a way to implement faster and simpler authentication workflows. They can be able to open up their app to more users by just getting out of the way. So there's a really great post on this, but if you are a product and you are requiring users to have an account creation, 86% of your users are going to be bothered if they have to create a new account. A lot of the times people just go to social logins for this, but there's a better way for this. And if you have to force people to create an account, 50% of those users will just abandon that. The link below is filled with great resource statistics on social logins, just account creation, this whole authentication workflow. But really, if you have to have a workflow, you need to make this as simple as possible, or else you're just going to lose users. Now, web authentication allows you to have a workflow that your users can use, and then you, as the implementers, maintain that authentication, that detail, and then your users can get access to whatever they need to do quickly. So let's just play this video real quick. WebAuthn.io is a really nice site showing you how web authentication can be implemented and what the workflow looks like. We just have a few settings here, but what we're going to do is just create a simple little account name, and I'm just going to enter my username basically all over the world. And by going in and creating this account and just saying, I only need my username, use this username, and then I'm going to use web authentication to authenticate that I am who I say I am. Now, this is going to use the device's own authentication credentials. We're basically going to say, hello, I'm website A. My device is going to verify that I am who I am. We can use, in this case, I'm on iOS, and I'm just going to use Face ID. I'm going to let that authenticate. I'll continue, and then my account has already been signed in, or my account has already been created. I didn't have to go through this, enter my email address, enter a password, confirm my password, confirm my email address, open up the eventual email that I get to be able to confirm that I have access to email. My phone has all that information. And chances are your device has that information as well. So when we go to actually log in, we can just click log in, pick that account from our device's credentials, and just say, yep, use my phone as the authentication here. Use it as the authenticator key for this website. Go through, sign in, and guess what? I'm logged in. This whole workflow without commentary, and if I just want to do it in a real life app, could take 5 seconds because I'm depending on the device to manage a lot of those features, and I'm depending on the web to provide a good experience there. Now, web developers and the web platform tend to like acronyms. So I've created an acronym for this called Time to Account Creation. Basically, if you have a low TTAC, you're going to have a better experience with your users and also better results from better results and better conversions. Basically, I can go in and say, this one, the time to account creation is 5 seconds. You're going to have a better experience. And, the metrics reflect this. So AliExpress implemented these features, saw an 11% increase in conversion rates, which is fine. But I think the most important features here, metrics here are, it saw an 85% drop in sign-in failures, meaning that users were able to get to their site, get to their needs, get to all the features that AliExpress offers much faster and at a much more successful rate. And in doing so, they also saw a 60% decrease in time spent signing in, meaning that they're not having to go through this whole ritual of logging in. They are able to get to the site, get to the core product set faster, quicker, and with less headaches, which is what we should all be aiming for. Another option here that people can look at is this idea of web payments. Web payments basically builds on top of web authentication to provide a faster, easier experience around purchasing things online. Chances are your device already has some kind of wallet. I have an iPhone, so I have Apple Pay, but there's the same equivalent on Android. You already have this information provided in it. Why not just use that? Why not let the web use that? Now, traditional payments have to manually enter your card or store that card on some remote server. Chances are, if you are a user of a mobile website and you are asked to enter in your credit card information, you're going to drop. In fact, a third of all users, only a third of all purchases on mobile are completed. 66% of them just kind of abandon it because why bother entering your credit card information? It's kind of cumbersome to do that, hold your phone, and the inputs typically don't use the right format. So yeah, this is to be expected. Web Payments says, why don't we just have you use the credentials based on your phone and then provide a better experience of this? So let's see what this is. This is Apple Pay on the web. And what this payment is doing is just using my credit card stored on my device, and it's going to do a demo charge of $1.99. It'll let me go ahead and just say, hey, I don't care about the actual payment or how the account credit card is handled. Just give me the credit card information, whether that's a token or some kind of request, and then I can pass it off to my traditional payment processing server. My relay server can handle that, make their purchase. I don't care about having to give users a input to enter all this stuff. I can just let them handle it because the device has it. So Apple Pay, Google Pay, Stripe, PayPal, all these payment providers are actually taking advantage of this. They are letting people use these web payment tokens and then offering up the endpoints for them to pass that payment information from web payments to their own endpoints. So there's a lot of libraries around this. The developer ergonomics is still new and still evolving, but the impact of this is there. People are able to complete their purchases faster. They're able to get to buying whatever it is that they need without having to go through the headache of entering all that credit card information, or even the security concerns of, are they storing that information correctly and safely? Are they encrypting it? Is it obfuscated? Or are they just storing it in plain text? By taking advantage of this, they can have at least a little bit more trust that it is a secure payment and that it's going to be easier to complete. Now, the final topic that I want to dive into is this integration concept. I think this is something that most people are aware of when they think about progressive web apps, and that PWAs should be installable. They should, blend where does the browser end and when does the app end, and they should work offline. These are kind of the core promises that PWAs intend to deliver, and they are what most people expect. Most developers expect when they think about progressive web apps. Now, I don't need to focus so much on how you implement this. There are plenty of other resources that can dive into that and dive into it in a little bit more detail. I wanted to dive into the results of this and how companies who have built progressive web apps in general and have done the service worker and have done the manifest and done all of the deep integration work and what the results of that have been. So obviously the most famous one, I think, in the developer circle is the Twitter progressive web app, which saw massive success as soon as it was launched. People were excited for this. Your developers were very excited for this, but also your regular users were excited for this. As soon as they saw that prompt to install, they were like, okay, let's install this. This is great. There was also housing.com, which also created their own progressive web app. 38% increase in conversions, 10% longer sessions. People are just happy to have an app that feels at home, feels integrated, and just stays on device. This isn't anything groundbreaking, I think. As soon as you see an app on your little home screen, your chances of using that app are going to increase. AliExpress, again, they saw 104% increase in new users across all browsers. So, yeah, that's incredible. And probably the most interesting one, which if you talk to anyone who's been doing work in progressive web apps, they say that iOS can't do PWAs, but it doesn't really matter because a good progressive web app experience is just a good web experience. So even with that, AliExpress saw an 82% increase in iOS conversion rates, which you don't necessarily expect to see with progressive web apps. So keep that in mind. Your progressive web apps are just a really good web experience, and it's going to have impact across all mobile devices. Generally, PWAs are just going to be a lot better at giving you a good experience and then giving your users a better experience. There's a lot of talks of a lot more articles about this. Developers.google.com/web/showcase. You can dive into all of these case studies, as well as some of the other case studies that you've heard here today. But I think the time to argue that PWAs can't be successful is over. People already have seen that progressive web apps provide a lot of value. So yeah, what impact does the progressive web app have? Quite a bit. You can be very successful with the PWA. And it doesn't have to be going all into the offline experience, the native the caching, the manifest, service worker. You could just implement the tangential APIs of a progressive web app and still be very successful. There's still a lot of value in just getting the little pieces that are on the, I would say, orbit around the concept of a progressive web app. You could implement those little things and still find a lot of success and still, push your metrics up. So always answer the question or ask the question: do you need a native app? I would argue you don't. So I'm a little ahead of time. We got some time for Q&A, but again, if you have any questions at a later point in time, please feel free to reach out on Twitter. I'm essentially M Hartington everywhere, but I'm most active on Twitter. So thank you for your time, and let's go to the questions.
Thank you for sharing the experience. I have a few questions from our audience, and the first question is from Tom, and that is: does the authentication feature works only for PWA stores?
No, the authentication feature is again, it's one of those topics that revolves around progressive web apps, but is accessible to your general website. As long as you're serving through HTTPS, you have access to this. You could be on a desktop or just on, my demo was in mobile Safari. I wouldn't necessarily classify that site was a progressive web app, but it still is able to take advantage of that. And I think that's something that a lot of people tend to get confused by, is that you don't need to use a full progressive web app experience to get the advantages that the concepts bring.
Thank you for the answer. The second question is from Robert, and the question is: are there any disadvantages of PWA implementation for the businesses?
No, I wouldn't say that there's a disadvantage. There's a lot of it's a lot of things to consider, especially when it comes to user experience. You have to keep in mind that P in progressive web apps is progressive. So you should be progressively enhancing the experience as you get to browsers that can support these features. So if you're keeping that in mind, there should be very limited disadvantages. It should only improve the experience as well as enhance it for modern devices.
Thank you. The second question is: how long is an average PWA project?
I mean, I guess that is, that depends on the company, the app that you're trying to build. I've seen some that, 6 months time, where it's a greenfield project, they're able to get to market real quick because they don't have any legacy code bases. But I've seen some that are going on 3 or 4 years, and some that probably won't have an end goal. They're just going to be an evergreen project that constantly keeps improving. The enterprise is a real strange place when it comes to timelines and estimates for shipping a product.
Question number 4 is: anyone know a PWA with a good lighthouse score?
This is a this is actually a really good question.
Oh, really?
Lighthouse is an interesting thing. I have a lot of respect for it, and I think it does a lot of good because it gives you some good hints. I try not to focus too much on the score itself, but if you're looking for actual examples, Squoosh.com, I think, or Squoosh.dev. A lot of these sites from the Chrome folks, they can be good examples of what a highly scored progressive web app is. But I wouldn't focus too much on the score right off the bat. I would just try to focus on the inner details that they are offering. Like, hey, you're loading these 5 images that are really high resolution and not using them right away. Probably don't load them. I wouldn't focus too much on the score.
As far as I've seen, there is no questions from our listeners, but I've been listening to your presentation by myself very carefully as well, and I have some questions for you from me personally as well. So, what do you think? Which e-commerce industry could benefit most from PWA? For example, like fashion, HoReCa, so on. What's your opinion regarding that?
Yeah, fashion and retail probably are the biggest industries that could benefit from this. I think like I bought this jacket recently, and the
Nice
process,
one.
because yeah, I really like it, but the process to actually buy it was very cumbersome, and it was that exact same uh, workflow that I described. Of I had to create an account, I had to go through, add the information, pull out my credit card, and actually, enter that manually, because I just didn't actually have any of the features that were implemented. I think that soon as the retail, fashion, all of those industries kind of take advantage of these features, you're probably going to see people buy things faster. I was definitely going to buy this because I really like it, but had it had implemented um, the web payments feature, I would have been able to purchase this a lot faster and a lot quicker, um, or a lot faster with less headaches than what actually went through. So, yeah, fashion, retail, um, definitely ones that could take advantage of the stuff and probably would do it. Should be doing it right now.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, well, we are on business day now, so from your personal experience, do PWA developers think about development from the business perspective?
I would argue no. Most developers don't think about the business impact. A lot of the times that tends to be a afterthought, or something that comes from the top down. They look at the metrics first. I think it'd be a healthy thing for developers to start considering the actual uh, impact on a business by actually getting invited to those calls. I know in my experience, I've always asked to be involved with the marketing calls, um, the analytics, the SEO results, and get some insight into. All right, we shipped feature A, B, and C. How did that push the needle? Um, I want to be informed about that beforehand, before going in and actually writing any code. And more people should be involved in that process.
Well, while we were talking about my questions, we've got some new questions from our listeners. And this question is, if API and logic are slow, is PWA not useful?
That depends. I mean, if you're if API and logic are slow, I would guess if that is that the implement. I would ask, is that the implementation feature, or is that the code that your users are writing? Um, if I'm writing really slow code and really slow features, yeah, that PWA is not going to be useful. If a implementation or like a web feature is very slow, potentially it's not useful to you, maybe, but it could be useful to other folks as well. Um, there's no right or wrong answer here. It just kind of depends on the situation, I guess.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for the answer. And the next question is, it is it is very difficult to integrate PWA with the third-party extension. How do you do that?
Um, Third party extensions, I would definitely consider some. It kind of depends on the extension. Again, PWA is not necessarily like you're building a new thing. So ask the question: how would you do this if you were just building a good website? If you're building a good website and you can integrate that third party extension with that, the same principles would apply here. You're just building a web app, not necessarily another specific product. If you have your concerns and difficulties that you're facing are around performance and overall, experience output, that could be something that you have to just ask yourself: do we need this extension? Do we need this third-party thing in our site? It's terrible for performance, and it's really just difficult and bad for our user experience. Potentially, just cut it.
Okay.
But yeah, it kind of depends. It's the difficult thing about these very specific questions is it depends on everyone's use case and everyone's situation.
So we have 3 minutes left, and I guess we have covered all the questions. And I really want to thank you again for the talk and the nice chat. And actually, you will have another one nice talk with Yuri Pratsuk and Jordan Eisenberger tomorrow on the second day of the event. I encourage everyone to join the discussion, about PWA, which is lightning fast, much more lightning faster than my freezing video, so I'm sorry for turning it off. And today we broke down business fears. Tomorrow we will have another kind of psychological session about developers' concerns. So Mike, see you tomorrow. And in few minutes, we are going to have a talk with Sajish Morning and Debashib Heda from the Algolia. So stay with us and we'll see you in a couple of minutes.